on Chabad.org. She's giving a tefillah class now. Last week. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah.
Chabad,
Okay.
Chabad.org.
Ready to start?
Golden Club.
Thank you.
Hello. I don't have my glasses. I left my glasses. I did that. I ran out.
You learned Sikha last week? I'm assuming with someone else?
Yes.
Do you want to just give over what? Because we didn't.
Oh, I don't need to know what.
No. We didn't do it on the parsha. No, we didn't do it on the parsha though. So maybe you just want to tell that.
I think we did.
Who taught Sikha?
Oh yeah.
Oh, beautiful. You did it?
I had them with you last week, Mrs. Bobkowski was with.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I'm sure you
So Mrs.
enjoyed.
Bobkowski did according to the parsha that Rabbi.
Yeah, it was an idea in the
Just did a
parsha,
very
but
interesting-
the parsha.
Which
Right.
Chelik? Which Chelik?
This is from Chelak Beis.
Chelik base.
Okay, you would like a copy? Sure. What? Parsha? Okay, so we're on this week's Parsha. Parsha for A. Do you want a copy? Okay. Okay, so today we're learning a short sikha that I'm hoping we will learn from the beginning to the end and complete it today. We learn about a mitzvah in today's parsha that we all know about and we all learn about. I'm sure my little son's going to come home from camp this week and he will have learned about it as well. But in this sikha, we take the concept much deeper and we learn about, according to Chassidus, what is this mitzvah meant to teach us about ourselves? Now, which mitzvah are we discussing? We're talking about one of the basics in the laws of kosher, that what is a kosher animal? Kosher animal has split hooves and chews its cud. Now, the Rebbe has taught us many times and brings it down again here that anything in Torah, every detail in Torah has a tremendous lesson to us. And the way we're going to learn it in the Sikha, we're going to talk about the fact that are these signs, the fact that an animal who chews its cud and has split hooves is kosher, are these signs what makes the animal kosher? Or are they signs that differentiate the kosher from the non-kosher? In other words, is it something internal, that this is actually what caused that animal to be a kosher animal, appropriate for consumption? Or is this just an external thing that happens to let us know that, oh, you should know that this animal is kosher, and this is how you know? Okay, well, we're going to see what the Rebbe tells us. Actually, the Rebbe doesn't choose which one is correct. The Rebbe comes to tell us that, let's see in a second. I'm going to spill all the beans before we start. Okay, so we're holding in Chelak Beis, page 375, or if you have Likkutei Sichos Parshas, it's the first Sikha. Okay. In Heintige Sedra, Retzach Vagen Zeisa Behema Shar Techelu, for those who are new to our class, welcome. I see two new faces. I should really ask you for your names.
My name is Elkie.
Elkie?
Yeah.
Hi, great to meet you. I'm Fegi. And? Chaya. Good, and it's wonderful to see you again. And it's excellent to see you again. Okay, so in this week's parsha, the way we do it is that we always read in Yiddish, but if you don't know Yiddish, that's just fine. We will translate. Who here is not familiar with Yiddish? Remember, you didn't read inside. Who? You're not familiar with Yiddish? Okay.
I'm also new words.
I know you're new, but I know your face. That's what I didn't ask you. I see you around. You're not a new face to me, although you haven't been in our class yet. So hello, welcome. What did you say?
I understand a few words, but not.
Okay. So we will translate. No worries. Okay? And if you get stuck with something or something isn't clear, just please let me know. Okay. In Heintige said, Retzach wegen Zeisa Behema Asher Techelu. Behema is Tehoiros. Und wegen ha Behema Asher Loi Techelu, Behema is Timeus. Und die Teure geht on zwei Simonim, auf ha Behema Asher Techelu, Milas Geira, und Mafresas Parsa. In this week's parsha, we learn about the animals which we are allowed to eat, pure animals, and the animals which we are not allowed to eat, which are impure animals. And Torah tells us there are two signs for the animal which we are allowed to eat, which is that it chews its cud and it has split hooves. In the Samana from Torah and Franz Feisogim, like we said, when Torah gives us signs for something, not only signs for animals, there are signs for many things. Torah tells us, fish, right? They have scales and fins. There are so many things Torah gives us signs for. If I give examples, it might mean that this is what it's talking about. The Rebbe didn't give examples, but let's think of other things in Torah that we differentiate by certain signs. Saras?
A woman, me and Tomer.
Okay, exactly. So there's signs. So are those signs actually make her tummy, or she's tummy now and this is proof of it? Taras, right? Leprosy. So there were certain signs that told us to what extent has this taras traveled.
Why do we need to know this? What difference is it?
Oh, so let's see what I was going to say. Okay, Aleph. Their first kind of signs are garmim. These signs are actually the cause. Azalche simanim, as sie seien a tam, v'siba auf der Zach. Ubenidan didan, durch dem, was die Behema is miles geir, mafrasas parsa, is the Behema Torah. These signs actually cause the thing that they are signs for. For example, the fact that the animal chews its cut and has spurus actually causes that animal to be a kosher animal, which we are allowed to eat.
I have another example. It says the Jews are by shanim, they do chesed, they're ashamed. What's the one?
Rahmanim.
Yeah, and they have mercy.
That's another sign. Bees, the other thing that these signs might be is mavdilim. They help us to differentiate. Azach simana v'zi zayin nit kein tam v'siba if der zach. Sie zayin mernet v'mavar di tara v'heipach hatara was es voran in der zach mitzad atzmai. Das werden is barer durch die simanim. There are signs which are not actually the cause or the result of the fact itself, but they are signs that help us to identify.
What is vert? What's vert?
It becomes clear through these signs. Which kind of animal is this? Pneumius Teres Chassidus verbindt der Mashal mit dem Nimshal. The Rebbe is going to explain now that according Chassidus has this concept that works out like this. If you have an idea, and then you need a mashal, you need a parable to explain that idea, Chassidus tells us that mashal and nimshal are very much connected. Now we might say, well, they're not necessarily connected, just this happens to be a parable that explains that concept. Not because they're connected, because they happen to work. Chassidus tells us the fact that they happen to work, there's no such thing as happens to. It's divine providence. The fact that it works is because this concept is a very lofty concept. And to understand it, we need a parable, means that the way that lofty concept comes down in a physical way is actually in this parable.
Comes down to understand.
Yeah. So that the nimshal and the mashal are actually very much related. Okay? Now, based on this, the Rebbe is going to say that it doesn't really matter to us if the signs are the cause of the animals being kosher, or they are just a sign to let us know that the animals are kosher. Either way, the fact that these signs are related to the animal being kosher or not means that the signs and the kosherness of the animal is very much connected. That being the case, these signs obviously have a very powerful lesson for us. Okay? Let's see it in the Rebbe's words. Huh?
Strange.
You're jumping ahead. Where are you? Okay.
She explains it.
Well, let me just ask you. Do you have a preference to Taka read every word inside?
Yes.
Or if we skip? Yes. Okay, good. So, Pneumius HaTorah, Torah Chassidus, the inner dimension of Torah, which is the Chassidus, verbindt der Mashal and the Nimshal, always connect the parable to the Nimshal. What's the English word for Nimshal? The parable to what the parable is there for. Okay? What's the word? I don't know. No, because when we give a parable for something, we're trying to explain a concept, right? So in Hebrew, there's the nimshal.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't know what's the English word for that.
There is one.
What?
There is one.
There is. Yeah, I'm sure there's a word. I mean, there has to. If you have a parable, then obviously the parable is for something, right? But I don't know what the word is. If it comes, let us know. Hagam, der mashal is a fremde zach. Although the parable is a strange thing to the concept itself, seemingly it has no connection to it. Is merinit be a mashal bavad. She's only a parable. Nevertheless, for bintmenim mit the nimshal, we do connect it with the nimshal. Varum, because es is nidok kein zufall, mikra stam in welt. There's no such thing as coincidence in this world. Das was is a mashal zum nimshal. The fact that this is a parable for the Nimshal is weil nenzich von him, is because she roots, or the parable roots itself in the Nimshal. Der Indian was in Nimshal, wenn kommt herab an a nidrik in Eilam, wird das Mashal. When that Nimshal comes down into the lower worlds, it becomes the Mashal. Like them, haben beide sugim in simanim mashayches zu der Sache allein. According to this, both types of simanim, of signs, whether they're the cause or they're just something external, they both are very much connected to the thing itself that they are signs for. Afelu die simanim zijn nit kein tam v'siba, nar mer nit wie simanim auf bewahr sein, haben euch zu tun mit der Sache allein. Nit zufällig ist das der Simen, nor wenn die Sach kommt herab, niedriger wird das der Simen.
Becomes clear.
So, even if it's not actually the cause, it still has very much to do with it. It's not. It's very much connected. This is a sign for a very valid reason. The Meilas verstandig, therefore we understand that the zwei Simanim von Meilas Germa versus Parsa in was war es so Simanim sie sollen reingehen, hat es zu tun mit sie Sebahim Asher Techelu. Therefore, the fact that an animal chews its cud and has split hooves has very much to do with the fact that that animal is kosher. Are we clear? Excellent. We are now going to move on to a concept that seems kind of unrelated, and it's very much connected, okay? We're now going to talk about the concept of eating in general. Why do we eat? What do we accomplish when we eat? Okay, now we're not speaking about why we eat so that we can have strength. We're talking about, from Torah's viewpoint, why does man need to eat? What do we accomplish when we eat? Including, is anyone here vegetarian? We're talking about animals, right? Animals that are kosher, we're allowed to eat. So we're going to talk about all kinds of eating. What's the goal when we eat? And then we're going to speak, well, if this is a kosher animal, and this is what makes the animal kosher, meaning this is what makes that animal something that we are allowed to eat, that's coming to teach us something very powerful. And the lesson the Rebbe teaches us is extremely practical, very much down to earth, very much something that I can relate to, and I think we can all relate to in a very practical way. So let's look inside and see, according to Chassidus, what is the goal and the purpose of our eating and really all our physical activities. Der inen hachila, zei sebehim asher teichelu, is as menemt achai, atzemeach, oder adayim. The concept of eating is that we take an animal or some type of vegetation or an inanimate object like water, and durch dem was men esst through this that we eat, we consume this thing, vertus dam ubasar kipsari. That thing that we've consumed, that we've eaten, becomes part of us, becomes part of our flesh, part of our blood. Und von dem daimim tzemeach ochai vert medaber. And from that animal, or that vegetable, or the water, any other inanimate thing that we've eaten, that item, that thing actually becomes part of a human being. Was durch dem führt sich aus der Tachlis von der Daimim Tzemeach Chai as wird nichlal in Medaber. And that is how that animal or vegetable product or water, inanimate object, that's how any of those things reaches their full potential. They reach their ultimate purpose of creation when they become part of a human being. That's in general. Now, within each human being, we have the parts of us that are animal-like, the parts of us that are like the vegetable kingdom, and the parts of us that are like daimim, which are inanimate objects. The whole world is made up of these four categories. creation is made up of these 4 categories, right? But not only creation at large, within each one of us, we have these 4 kingdoms, if we'll say. We have these 4 parts of us. In dem Adam Gufa seinen euch voranen Yonim, was in sei is gleich zu Daimim, Tzameach, Chai. Al derach wie die Gemara sagt, beschleusche nicht mal immer. Seine voranen Yonim, was in sei is abgeteilt von Daimim, Tzameach, Chai. Mit sei is ein Adam min Hamadaber. So within each one of us, we have these parts of Daimim, Tzameach, and Chai. Are we clear on what those 3 categories are? Okay, Daimim means something that can't move. It seems to be lifeless. Okay? Yeah. So it has God's life force there, definitely. But what?
Trees.
So trees actually reach the next category. Daimim is a tree is a Tzameach, right? It has life. It grows.
It's more like sand.
Right, so daimim would be sands. I said water because I was trying to think of what daimim do we actually eat. And I think that water is the only thing that's inanimate that we eat, right?
No, minerals. You have calcium tablets.
Okay, that's true. That's true, absolutely, you're right. Okay, then we have tzameach, which is anything that grows, the vegetable kingdom. Chai is anything that lives, any creatures. Okay? And then medaber is a human being. So within each person we have all 3, like the Gemara says. What?
And the Kuzari says.
Right, the Rebbe doesn't discuss it here. So this definitely discusses that there's a 5th category, which is a Yid, who's distinguished and separate from there's a human being, and then there's a Jew who's a human being in a different category, but we don't discuss that here. So, like the Gemara says, that there's 3 things in which a person's similar to an animal. In other words, that we have those parts of us that are like an animal, those parts of us that are like tzameach, those parts of us that are like daimim, and then there is that part of us that is different than daimim, tzameach, and chai. And it's those parts of us that are distinguished and not similar to daimim, tzameach, and chai that actually distinguish us and make us human. Okay, those characteristics and qualities that we have, that animals, that we do not share with animals, that's what makes us human. And that's what we're going to be speaking about. Azevi in daimim, tzameach, chai medaber bechlal is niet de daimim, tzameach, chai der tachlis, nor der medaber dafke. Und euch die Meile in daimim, tzameach, and chai is beshas sie wären nichlal in der medaber dafke. Just like within the world at large, the ultimate purpose is not the daimim, tzameach, and chai. It's not the inanimate or the vegetable kingdom or the animal kingdom. It's the human being. And the maila, the specialty of those first 3 categories is when they become part of the human being. So too is euch in der Adam Gufa, in der Medaber Gufa, within the human being, it's the same thing. The parts of me that are like the animals or plants, etc., are not the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose of a human being is to utilize and express those parts of him that are unique to him being a human being, that he doesn't share with any other creatures on this earth. Die Inyanim, was is in sich gleich zu dem Tzameach Chai, nicht das ist ein Meile und sein Tachlis. Der Tachlis is der Inyan ha-medaber was in Der Tachlis von seinen Iberek Inyanim, die dem Tzameach Chai was in is, als euch sie sollen sein, leut dem Inyan von medaber was in Und in dem sollen sie nicht werden. The purpose of all those other parts of me that I have, in which I am similar to animals or other creations, is so that they should be expressed they should be expressed by me as a human being.
What is Iverkin?
Extra.
And gleich means like?
Yeah, similar to. Are we clear?
Human being meaning spiritual? So
the Rebbe is going to discuss exactly what the Rebbe means when he says human being. Okay, the Rebbe is going to say where we get our name as Adam, a person. Where's that name from? And that's how human beings express. Generally in Chassidus, when we say that we're human being, we mean that we have seichel, we have intellect.
Is it a different level if you're called a medaber or if you're called Adam? It means 2 different things? 2 different levels or something?
I would say yes, Because when we say the word medaber, we could speak. We speak as an expression of intellect, right? Animals also communicate, but it's not called speech.
So the difference between humans and animals is that we have reason.
Right.
That's what makes us different.
Exactly. So when we say medaber, we're talking about our being human, that we have seichel. When we say the word adam, we're a person. Rebbe is going to say that when we say the word adam, we're actually referring to something deeper.
So it is like
Yeah.
Correct.
Except that when the Rebbe talks about adam here, I believe that to a certain extent that applies to every human being, not only to Jews. Yeah, true. That's true. That's true. We'll see it inside. Und er sei is eigentlich in dem Daim Zemeach B'chai B'chlalos, was der Adam not say, und sie werden Nichel und is der Tachlis von sie sollen Nichel werden in der Medaber Sheva Adam Dafke, durch dem, was der Mensch wird es äußert und zugepasst Leute sein in den Umeiles Adam. So the ultimate purpose of everything of all other parts of creation, is that they be included, consumed by, but included in the human being. Which part of the human being? The part of the human being that stems from or that expresses itself in his uniqueness as a human being. We follow? Human beings need to eat. But to eat just because we're eating and we like our food, that's similar to animals. So the animal hasn't actually reached his completion that way. The animal reaches completion when the human being ate him because he's a human being and he wants, for example, to use his energy to learn and understand. So he now took that animal to a different level. Also, let's see in the next paragraph, okay? Der Emerster Einin von Adam, what is the true, deeper, it's more than just concept. The real being of an Adam, of a person, is that he is Adam al-Elyon. He is similar to what is above. What is above? God himself. Kiviyachal. To the Adam ha'Elyon she'al ha'kisei. To the one above who sits on his throne of glory. Was the Adam ha'Elyon she'al ha'kisei is der emes Adam. He is the true being. We'll translate the word Adam the way we know it. He is the true man. Der emes sarmaylas ha'medaber, the ultimate truth and perfection of medaber, of one who can speak, of seichel, if we can say.
Wait, I'm sorry. Adam Elyon is true. Is what?
He is the truest Adam, the truest ultimate form.
But Elyon means
of being.
what?
Elyon means higher, above. We're referring to Hashem.
It means the spheres, configuration of the spheres.
Adam Elyon Shalakise, it's referring to the Hashem. We're not talking Zahir. We're not gonna differentiate which part how. It's referring to Hashem. Okay, so der Meile von dem Adam HaTachten, the Meile of a lower man, meaning of people who live on this earth, is was is Adam Adam HaElyon. Our whole specialty, if we'll say, is that we are similar to our Creator. We're similar to Hashem Himself. Und der Far wird angerufen mit dem Namen Adam. That's why we're called Adam. Adam el-Elyon means he is similar to the one above. Our name Adam is because we are a reflection of Hashem. That's where the name comes from. So the truth of a human being, of an Adam, is that we are a reflection of Hashem. And I was going to go on and say that our true Maila, our true worth, if we'll say, is that we could connect to Hashem in a very, very real way.
It's a yearning to be close to Hashem, to be similar, I think, because
it's a yearning, but they're going to say it.
Who said it? It's where is it? I don't know where the process is. It's future tense, so it's like you're always trying to approach it. You can never completely reach it, like an asymptote. You know that. Never really get completely because Hashem is infinite.
Okay. The Milos Ha'adam is the beneficial quality of a person over other things is that he can and he should become one with Hashem. Durch dem was wird ausführen die Shlichus von Adam Elyon. How does he do this? By fulfilling the mission of Hashem.
What is Nichal?
Nichal is like Kailel. He becomes one. He becomes included in.
Included.
What? By fulfilling Hashem's will, by fulfilling Hashem's mission. And in this way, Malki, you are right that we are referring to Yid. A Jew has that mission of Hashem that he could complete. Okay, non-Jews also have the way that they need to connect to Hashem by fulfilling some mitzvahs, etc. But most likely, although the Rebbe does not say it clearly, we're talking about a Yid who is fulfilling exactly what Hashem wants from him, which obviously we only know through Torah, and it only applies to us. Okay. Wie der Klarton L'Kut Torah, the author explains in L'Kut Torah, as durch dem, was men tut as Shluchus von Adam Elyon, wird men kamaisai. By fulfilling the Shluchus of Hashem, we actually become like him. We know that in general, when a messenger fulfills a job, when he fulfills a mission, he's like the one who actually sent him on his mission. This doesn't only apply to someone fulfilling a mission of someone else, but when we fulfill Hashem's mission for us, we become like Hashem. Was das ist die Hiskalos, was wird Nichlal in Adam Elyon, and this is how we become included within Hashem. This is how it's more than just connect. Therefore, we become included in Hashem. Es ist voran in dem Aseder Draga. This happens slowly, step by step. Frier is das, and Idrika Madrega, der nach Hecher, bis peilt in sich die Skalos, as wird den ganzen Nichal in dem Adam Elyon. We go step by step and reach a level higher and higher until a person becomes completely included within Hashem himself. In Maimer, as freer is the Avodah von Acharei Hashem Elokeichem telechu Acharei mernet via Acharayim Belvad bis me kommt zum Tachas Aliyah Boisid Bakon as is nit kein Shumatzius Latzmai wird den ganzen Davok bis es wird ein Zach. This comes with steps. First we just go behind Hashem and we just follow Hashem and we're like a step behind, and then slowly we can actually come closer and closer until we become one thing with Hashem himself. But I'm going to close the door. It's my friend's bris.
It's a bris.
Oh, it sounds like a new baby. Maybe they gave birth to it.
No, they were probably examining the baby before the bris. That's what you heard
The
in
bris
the
is supposed to
classroom.
be it's supposed to be finished now. Yeah.
To go behind Hashem, what are you saying? We become
First
one?
we go after Hashem, right? And then slowly we become closer and closer until we're actually one with Hashem himself. And the Rebbe gives us the ultimate example. The ultimate example of this is Moshe Rabbeinu. That he became so one with Hashem that he was actually able to say in Torah, "V'nasati Esav Vita, I will give you rain. I will give you." What do you mean I? He was so one with Hashem that Hashem was speaking through his throat. That's the ultimate example. And our job is to get as close to that as we possibly can. Al derech madrigas Moshe Rabbeinu, was hat gesagt, "V'nasati Esav." Weil ist gewesen in ganzen Bottle, ist nicht gewesen kein Metzias. V'nachnu ma. What are we? Again, ultimate bittul, the ultimate, it's not just humility, it's the ultimate selflessness. He didn't think of me and who am I, but he said, what am I? I'm only part of Hashem. I have a godly soul, that's what makes us who we are. And he reached a point that the Shechina actually spoke from his own throat. Das eine gewend die Rede von der Shechina, was hat geredet durch seine Heimatzais. Hashem actually spoke through his mouth. Our mouth can make different utterances, you know, the way our tongue touches our lips or whatever, makes different words come out, and Hashem actually spoke through his mouth. Raid, speech. Was das is die Madrega von Ubaisid Bakon, and this is the ultimate level of Ubaisid Bakon, and you shall cleave to him. We have a mitzvah in Torah to cleave, to attach ourselves to Hashem, and this is the ultimate level of that. When Azavi and Emma Lane, Azayis is Eichen or Daim Samea Chai, was nutzt das Just like within a person himself, our ultimate completion, the ultimate goal, our whole purpose is so that we could cleave to Hashem in this very real way. So too, the daimim tzameach and chai that I use, the ultimate goal is that I bring them to a place where they can also cleave to Hashem in a very real way. Now, that being the case, we're asking from, let's take an example of an animal, because we've been talking about animals, that's the mitzvah we have in our parsha. Let's take an animal. We want the animal who was built unlike a human being. An animal has 4 legs that looks to the ground. Okay? We're asking an animal who faces the ground, is very earthly, to cleave to Hashem.
He doesn't have consciousness.
Doesn't make sense.
He is
doesn't
very
know,
long.
He's not aware.
So that animal has to first be consumed by a human being, process, within that human being, and within the human being he has to reach the human being of the human being, right? That part of us that's human, that's an Adam, that can connect to Hashem and then actually connect to Hashem. It's a very long way to go.
What about non-kosher?
Non-kosher?
Why is it long?
I thought the question's going to come up. The Rebbe doesn't talk about it here. The Rebbe really doesn't discuss it. I thought about it as I learned the Sikha, not just because the question was going to come up, the question crossed my mind. One second. So an animal that's not kosher doesn't have to connect to Hashem? And I'm sure they do, and I'm sure that they each have their own way.
Different level.
Can't be they don't, because the whole world was created with one goal.
Yeah, but it connects to Hashem by
They're
us.
eaten by a guy.
It's already connected.
Maybe. Malki's saying that maybe if
By a guy.
Malki says that maybe it's connected to Hashem by us saying no and not eating it. That might be.
It has other things that it does.
But other animals do other things, right?
The spider in David Melech, I think.
Every animal has its
Exactly,
purpose,
it does
and
its
obviously
thing.
they have to fill their purpose differently. I would think, just like a Jew and a non-Jew, for us to reach this ultimate completion, we have to do all 613 mitzvahs, right? Because to truly become part of Hashem, every part of me has to be part of Hashem. That means every part of me has to express Hashem's will. A non-Jew also needs to connect to Hashem to some level. But for him it's much simpler. He only has 7 he needs to do.
But even though 7 is like, it's already a big thing, you know? Like,
It's a lot. I think we used to
Even
think it was
that
very
area
little, but now
fine.
there's a lot of people learning about it, and they have a lot of stuff they have to do, okay? But not 613. They don't have to keep Shabbos. Not only they don't have to, they're not allowed to. So they have an easier way to connect to Hashem, and they still fulfill their ultimate purpose that way. So I'd say that with kosher or not kosher, that's probably very much the case. Okay? They just have a different way of achieving the same goal, but they have to do it their way. Okay? If you put few children in a maze, okay, and you put them each in a separate entrance, they each have to reach the exit, but they're going through a different hallway to get there. And it doesn't matter what their hallway is, they have to reach the end. Okay? So they have a different, maybe they have a shorter route, they have a different route, that's for sure. And since we're not part of that route, I guess we don't have to know this.
you remember on Perik Shira, David Melech wrote it about each animal praises Hashem and stuff like that.
Yeah, they definitely praise
And
Hashem.
even
But
even some fake animals, or not kosher, fake animals are praising Hashem.
everything's praising Hashem. I actually just read an incredible story where it says that Chizkiyahu HaMelech, we're not going to finish the Sikha today, so I may as well tell the story. It says that, actually, we might stop. I'm going to save my story till the end, and if we have time, I'm going to tell you the story. It's an incredible story about how even the earth praises Hashem and how powerful its praise is. Okay, so now this animal, we're getting now to the real stuff, okay, that applies to us. This animal has a long journey to go. I know you said it's not long. The Rebbe says it's long. The Rebbe says it's a weite weg. It's a very long journey. How is he going to get there? Now, what the Rebbe is going to tell us is, Torah said there are 2 signs that help the animal get there. 2 signs that tell us this animal could get there. There are also 2 signs that, like we said, it's not just external. It has to also be internal. Because if there's signs, they're obviously connected with the animal itself. There are 2 signs that enable the animal to get there. If he chooses its cud and has split hooves.
To get where? To get elevated?
To go through that process and connect to Hashem. Okay? The Rebbe is going to explain those signs, not the way the animal does them. Because remember that the animal only reaches its potential through us. Okay? When we eat that meat, we need to bring the animal to its true potential. So those two signs are actually, it's actually work that we got to do. Okay, and it's expressed in two forms: chewing its cud and having split hooves. The Rebbe actually says in the opposite order: having split hooves, we're going to discuss first, and then chews its cud. And if we do those two signs, then it's appropriate for consumption. We know that this is going to help us reach our goal, and we will be able to connect to Hashem this way. Okay. So let's go inside. We're in Eis Dalet, page 2, second column. B'chdei soll können sein der Inyan. Men soll nehmen a behema, was ruach a behema hayeredes hilamata. Und peilen in ihr a ha'ala vihis skalalos. Hepech tiva von iride lamata. Freer die skalos en adama tachtoin en durch dem euch en adama elyon. Was das is doch gara weite weg. Von achrei Hashem alekechem bizu beisit bakon. Was kol drachem mecheskas sakana. In order for an animal that naturally looks downward, the soul of an animal does not aspire upward. It looks downward. It's facing downward. That animal has to become first part of Adam HaTachton, of a lower human being, of us. And then it has to become part of Adam HaElyon. That's a really long way to travel. We're starting from going after Hashem to actually becoming one with Hashem. The Rebbe says it's a long road. And there's a quote in Gemara that all roads are kind of dangerous. So it's a long way, and it's a difficult way. How can we be sure that we'll get there safely? And again, we're talking about how the animal's going to get there, but since we're the ones who have to bring the animal that route, it's really work that we have to do. B'chdei soll können durchgehen die Weg, hat die Teure uns gegeben zwei Simanen, welche beweisen sie, tut seine Weide, wie es darf zu sein. In order to be able to do this way, to travel this way, Torah gave us two signs that show us if we are doing our work the way it needs to be. Okay, these are two signs that are going to help us differentiate, to help us see, are we doing what we have to do? See, is sich misasig in die Dvar Magashrim, for them to me Chai L'Shem Shemayim, Lavidus Hashem, was demot peilt in zei, Aha Viskalis Kanal, Ashar Techelu. See, tut das nicht wie man darf. Tut das nicht Lavidus Hashem, aber mit sein Tivius Gilos, was demot peilt nicht in dem kein ha'ala nor verkehrt. Demot is a shalai sechel. These two signs will help us differentiate. Am I doing what I'm doing because I want to serve Hashem? Is this truly for the sake of Hashem? In which case, I accomplish that, I uplift the daimim sameachai, I uplift everything like we just discussed, to level of baisid bakan, and in that case, ashar techelu, you can eat these animals, this is an appropriate work for us to do. Or am I not doing what I need to do? That I'm not actually doing it for Hashem, I'm just doing it the way my habit developed, I'm just doing it, I'm just following my nature. And in that case, not only am I not uplifting whatever it is that I was involved with, not only am I not uplifting it to Hashem himself, but I'm actually accomplishing the opposite. And in that case, then Torah says, this is the behema asher lo seichelu, you should not eat it. This is not appropriate for you. We're not doing what we have to do.
So here the mashal is that the animal is anything you do? It's not just...
I think at this point we're talking about ourselves. Ourselves and things that we're involved with. Okay? So is it going to be seichelu, eat it, go ahead, or lo seichelu, don't eat it, not good for you. Okay?
Because the implication is that if mashal is eating, that when you're involved in something, you're getting something out of it, like you're processing it, and it's becoming part of you. Like it's not just something you're doing, like it's not connected to you, you just happen to be doing it. The minute you're doing something, you're already like eating it.
True.
You're getting some pleasure from it.
Yeah. And if I'm not.
No, it's okay.
An observation.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, I agree. Okay. So in Torah R, I tried to look this up. I was not successful. In Torah R bringt von Reb Chanina ben Tradian. Was hat getan zwei Inyanim, ein Meise was hat getan in Kava Chesed, und der zweite Meise was hat getan in Kava Gvura. Und hat das getan mit demselben Eifen. Durch dem hat man gewusst, als das ist nicht mitzad der Teva, nor mitzad der Veda. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on page 3. Halfway through the first column.
Hey.
I say. Durch dem hat man gewusst, dass das ist nicht mitzad der Teva, nor mitzad der Veda, warum oib mitzad der Teva hat nicht gekannt sein, beide Sachen mit derselben Chayes. Torah brought an example of Chanina ben Chazin, who was a Tana, we'll talk about him in a second, that he did two actions. One followed the route of kindness, and one followed the route of severity. And when he did both actions, they knew that what he was doing was for real. Because a person naturally can't do both. He was doing both with the same passion and the same excitement. And we naturally work one way with passion and excitement. Well, the fact that he did both means he was really doing it for Hashem's sake. I tried to figure out which two actions is the Rebbe talking about. I didn't find it. I did look up a little bit about Chanina ben Tradian. He was a Tana. He was one of the 10 sages who were killed. Asara Haruga Malchus. He was the father of Reb Meir. Actually, second, I read that he was the father of Beruria and he was the father of Meir. Beruria and Meir were husband and wife, so he must have been the father of one of them. Okay, I think he was the father of Beruria and Meir was his daughter-in-law, was his son-in-law. I'm sorry. Was he the one who?
No, there's somebody who saved his sister-in-law because the sister-in-law had been brought to the house of the harlots, and he saved her.
I think it was his daughter who that happened to, and Meir saved her. His son-in-law saved her. I'm not 100% sure, but what I read today is that his daughter they did that to punish her because she was once walking and the Romans spoke about her. Oh, look, this young girl's walking so beautifully. And so she kind of like was very careful about the steps she was taking. She realized they were looking at her and they punished her for that. No. Oh, okay. I may have misunderstood. I thought it was the opposite. Because she heard them sing that, she became very self-conscious. And so they weren't happy with
Why
that.
would they punish her?
For the Romans?
I heard you say
the Romans were punishing her.
Punishing her for,
I don't know, maybe they wanted to continue enjoying, and I'm not sure exactly.
What's it have to do with this?
The Romans weren't happy with it, so they kind of punished her. We're talking about Chanina ben Tradian, so I'm telling you a little bit about what I heard about him, so we could try and figure out what are these two actions. Anyway, the point is that he lived at a time when the Romans said you are not allowed to teach Torah, and he continued to teach Torah. One of his friends said, "How can you do this?" Obviously, Hashem gave the Romans power. Look, they burned the Beis Hamikdash. They have power over us. You have to listen to them. And he says, I have to listen to God. And my job is to teach Torah. And he continued to teach. And the Romans did capture him. And they said, why did you teach Torah? And he said, I'm doing what God told me. And so they sentenced him and his wife to death. And they actually killed him in a very painful way. And they wanted to punish his daughter as well. I didn't understand exactly what the punishment was. His daughter was also punished to some extent. And he gave up his life with joy. And at one point, they burned him to death. But they prolonged it by they wrapped him up in a Torah scroll and they wrapped him with wet wool so that his heart wouldn't give way. So his students said, open your mouth so the fire will go inside and kill you. You're suffering so terribly. And he says, no. The God who gave me life will be the one to take it. I will not take my own life. And I think when the executioner heard that, he was so astounded that he took the wool off so that Chanina can die. And I think the executioner jumped into the fire as well.
Yeah, he asked for guarantee. He said, well, I will join you in the or maybe just.
Okay. But what Rav Hanani ben Tradian did, and I think this might be the two actions that he did both. He was in charge of the tzedakah fund, of distributing charity, and he was very, very meticulous, extremely meticulous with the funds, to the point that he once had to put aside a large amount of money for him to use for his personal self on Purim, and that money had gotten mixed up with the charity. And my guess is if that happened to me, okay, I'd want to be on the safe side. I'd take some out, and he said no. He used all of it for charity. He was very, very, very scrupulous. So these are the two things I saw about him when I tried to what is the Rebbe referring to? Maybe the fact that he gave tzedakah so openly was chesed, and the fact that he was ready to give up his life was gvura. I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is that he served Hashem with two different kinds of service that a normal person can't do both, and he did them both passionately, both excitedly, and that proved that he was doing it for Hashem, not for himself. If I naturally like to be kind, and I take pleasure in it, that doesn't really say that I'm serving Hashem. I'm doing what feels good for me. But if I can do both, and I can set boundaries where they need to be, because that's what Hashem said, and then I can be kind where I need to be, that means I'm doing it for Hashem, not for me. Okay, so he's the example that was being brought down. Wie steht in Sifri, aber wir seien zwei Midas Hafchim, sie können gehen zusammen, Seiden und Weis Hashem ist das Kennen sein, beide Midas zusammen. The only way that we could have love and fear is when it comes to Hashem. Because as a human being, love and fear are two conflicting emotions, and we can't have both. I guess at the same time, within the same context. The only way they could come together is if they're both for Hashem. And the example that ever brings down is Avraham Avinu. We know that Avraham Avinu had 10 tests. And when it came to the test of Akedas Yitzchak, only then did Hashem say, oh, now I know that you fear Hashem. What do you mean now you know if you fear that Avram fears Hashem? He passed 10 tests. He jumped into a fiery furnace because he refused to deny the existence of Hashem. That wasn't proof? He passed so many tests that only when he was ready to sacrifice Yitzchak, now Hashem knows that he fears Hashem. And the answer is, and this is explained at great length in other places, we're not going to go through all of it, that with all the other tests that he passed, it could have been possible to look at them and say that he was doing it because it made sense for him. Okay? His mission was to teach the world about Hashem. So if he would die for this belief, the message would spread so far, so fast. Akedas Yitzchak defied all of that. It did not make any sense to him. It was completely against his nature. We know that Avram was a man of kindness, right? In the middle of, he would feed all the Arabs, and he was a man of kindness. To kill his own son, going completely against his nature and against everything he stood for, there would be no way to continue his mission in this world. That was proof that he was doing it only for Hashem. He was doing it against his nature. Okay? So again, being able to serve Hashem with two
diametrically opposed.
Two sides that seem to be opposed. Being able to do both for Hashem means that I'm doing it for Hashem, not for me. Exactly. And which sign is this of the animal? It has split hooves, right? It has both. It has two, not just one.
And the right and the left.
Das ist eigentlich, was es steht bei Avraham Avinu. B'shas, in Yisrael Akid Dafka, we're on the top paragraph on page 3, second column. The Dafka by the Akida, Hashem said, Atidaiti kireli kemata. Die Friede können sehen, es einen Gewinn in Kav. In Kav ha-Yemin. Hat man doch nicht gekannt wissen, sie, dass es nicht mit der Teva. Aber b'shas, es hat sich gewinnt, der Nisayin. Als hat genommen Yitzchak into der Akida, bis hat gewollt tan. Was hat gewollt. Was das ist doch mit Zeit Kavakbura, ist Atidaiti kireli kemata. Atidaiti, euch auf alle Friede können sehen, ist das ist mit Zeit ha-Aveda. When Avram was actually ready to kill Yitzchak, which is what he was ready to do, because that's what Hashem asked of him, that's when Hashem said, oh, now I know you're doing it to serve me. Not only I know that you do this to serve me, now I know you did everything to serve me. Once you proved that you could go against your nature to serve me, I know that everything you did was pure, clean. And thus is their siman fun mafrasis parasa. This is the sign of split hooves. B'shas mitut mernetz bein kav kiyum adachat samcha kan zayin as das is mitzad the teva vargilos a siman for behemoth tahira is mafrasis parasa. Es ist zu spalten. Sie geht rechts und links in beide Seiten. Geht raus von seinem teva vargilos und tut die Schlichas von dem Adam Elyon wohin man schickt. Specifically, an animal that has split hooves, the animal goes right and left, right? The hooves, he's going both ways all the time. When a person can do those two avodas, he can serve Hashem in both ways at the same time. He can break through his own nature. That's proof that he does Hashem's mission, he does Hashem's will, regardless of where he is. It doesn't matter. He doesn't only serve Hashem when it's comfortable for him. He's not just working in his comfort zone, what works for him. He's serving Hashem regardless. And that's proof that it's actually for Hashem.
What is the last sentence mean?
Vu'in, where minshiktam, wherever he is sent. They might knock on the door because there might be a class afterwards. Should we continue or should we end? We have 2 paragraphs left.
Yes, you should. You should continue.
4 paragraphs left. Okay.
Please do.
Der Dinner of Fresses Paris is es darf sein zu spalten von oben und von unten. Ob nicht, das nicht kein Behemoth zu hören. Das, was tut in beide Kavim, darf sein, nicht nur nach Chitzenius allein, aber das ist nur in Chitzenius. Ob das ist nur in Chitzenius, aber im Primius steht mehr nicht wie in ein Kav, is lois seichelu. This is tougher to follow, definitely to implement. Peilt nicht die alles für Scholars. Es darf sein durchgespalten durch Pneumius und euch bepeilt. Durch und durch. Was damals ist, Teichelu or peilt die Scholars, bis kommt zu dem und weiß es backen. The Rebbe says that the hooves of an animal need to be split, and this is a concept in halacha that some animals look like their hooves are split, but they're not actually split all the way, and those animals are not kosher. The hoof needs to be split completely from underneath and from on top. And the Rebbe says that lesson for us is that it's not enough to just do both kinds of aveda superficially, meaning I do them both in action.
When you say both, what is both?
Both kinds of aveda, let's say, right?
Meaning
chesed and gvura. I think that for each of us it means different things. Okay, right? Depends on me. What's my nature, and then can I also do what's not my nature? It can't just be that I do the action. I also need to be able to do it, or more like to feel it inside.
Not just pay lip service.
That's what it just says right here. It has to also be b'pnimius. And if it's not, it won't accomplish the goal of actually elevating it to Hashem himself. The only way it can actually come to Hashem himself is that I internalize it. Which, the way I understand it, is that sometimes I can push myself to do something because I know I need to do it. Do I feel it? Do I love it? Not necessarily.
Because when your thought is correctly aligned with the right kavana to serve Hashem, then automatically the emotions should follow. If they go, emotions follow thoughts.
True. Although for myself, I found that there's sometimes, or often, there's a disconnect. I can understand something perfectly, and it makes perfect sense.
The question is, wow.
But I don't feel it in my stomach. You know what I mean? I feel it in my head, but the goal is to feel it in my kishkas, and that I don't have. And what the Rebbe is saying here, and I learned this, and I'm like, oh no, is that it's not enough to have it in my head. Because when I have it in my head, my actions will follow. But the Rebbe is saying it has to be in my gut.
I'll tell you afterwards.
Right.
Okay. Do we follow what the Rebbe is saying here? The Rebbe is saying it's not enough to just do it. Okay, maybe I'm the type who loves chesed, but I don't like to let it sit and daven. Okay? That's not my thing. Now, if I'm only going to go and I'm going to do favors for everybody all day, well, no, I need to kind of, break my habit. I have to sit and daven. It's something I need to do. Okay? Maybe I'm the kind of person who loves to sit and learn all day, but I also need to go and help others. I can't only be in my own box. Whatever it is, okay? We need to do both. But not just that I'm doing both, but I actually have to feel both to some extent. Or maybe I naturally have a love for Hashem, but that fear, that awe, that stepping back and saying, I don't want to do anything Hashem doesn't like, even if no one's going to know about it, even if it's only in my head, that's not my kind of thing, and I have to work on making that real. And there says that it has to be both. It really has to be through and through, not just a superficial thing. Yeah. Von deswegen, wie bald hat zu tun mit Gashmias, was es hat Scheiches zu Chomrias. Und a viel beschasser zet, als es ist mafrases Parsa, Torah nit verlassen sich auf sich. Es darf sein, euch der Simen Meiles Gera überkein, beidig sein sich, mevar sein noch einmal und wieder einmal. The Rebbe says, it's great to have split hooves. I'm doing both kinds. I'm really doing it just to serve Hashem. However, we need a caution line. Because I'm working in the physical world, and again, the whole thing that we're talking here is about using the physical world the right way, right? So, we're in a physical world. That's kind of not necessarily sensitive to godliness. And that being the case, I can't just rely and say, oh, I'm doing two kinds of Aveda, I think I'm good to go, I must be serving Hashem properly. The Rebbe says we constantly need to be chewing our cud, checking ourselves again and again. Am I really doing it right? I have to check one more time. Check one more time. We can't trust ourselves. Okay?
We can't
There-
only trust ourselves, because to some extent we have to trust ourselves.
We have to do our part, but the Rebbe is saying you cannot. Tar er zich niet verlassen zich auf sich. We cannot rely on ourselves. That's the word the Rebbe used. The Rebbe doesn't say only. The Rebbe says you cannot rely on yourself. You have to chew your cud, check yourself again. Check yourself again. The Rebbe doesn't use the words, but it seems to be very clear. They were saying you have to check yourself with someone else. Okay? Get a mashpia, check yourself again and again.
Or
Am I
what you
doing
know,
this right?
Or with what you already know, what you've learned, because we tend to.
But that
forget
means you're relying
what
on
we
yourself.
learned.
You're relying on yourself.
No, you're relying on your teacher. If you
Maybe.
learn properly, if you concentrate during class and you reviewed, and then we can check it against what we know in the truest part of our.
We could argue this
Shama.
the way I understand it, and again, it's
After
because
class,
here
you can
on
argue it.
paper,
They're only going to go by someone else, even the holiest person. First of all, they don't have time. It's not realistic. Hashem gave us a free choice. So
okay, we're getting called out. We must finish.
Let's
talk about it later. We haven't finished. Okay. Die Hara von dem in Aveda Bapayel. Me ken das uplearning von der Mata auf der Meile and from the Meile auf der Mata. We have one paragraph left and we finish the Sicha, so we're gonna finish. Azay b'shas me geht essen von der Behema darfen Dach zen. See es hat die Simanitara. Just like when we go to eat from an animal, we have to check, does the animal have those two signs that make it kosher? And if it doesn't, we're not allowed to eat it. Says in everything in this world that we want to go and do, we need to check for these two signs. We need to make sure that I'm not doing it just for myself. It has a split hooves, right? I'm doing it for Hashem. And then, der Simon stimmt, and if it looks to me like everything works, it's fine. We cannot rely on that itself. Darf haben a zweite Bür, and we have to do a second check. And this is the hero. And I was thinking to bring in, my brother-in-law wrote a kid's book. It hasn't been published yet, but when it is, it's worth reading. He wrote like a kid's book, and it's about this little boy who, moves to this new town, and he goes one day to visit. He walks outside, and he sees a farmer. And he goes to see the farmer, and the farmer's standing there with a cow, and he basically gets into conversation, and they talk about this cow, about how the cow always chews its cud. And he's like, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, we always need to make sure that we check everything again and again and again. So it's like a kid's book, and it's meant for little children. Yeah. It wasn't published. I don't know. He's working on it.
What's his name?
Gets to Ravashkin. Anyway, I think it's a very powerful lesson for us. Get in touch with our mashpiyas, make sure we're doing what we got to do.
It's like what it says in Ayam Yom. Like what's kosher, but even if it's kosher, you don't have to have it. In other words,
Yeah.
you know,
Right, because...
darfinish. What's that expression?
Thank you. I'm sorry I kept you late. Thank you. Okay. Hatzlacha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
What are you teaching? I'm teaching about strengthening Tachan and Amunah from different, using what we have already available and understanding how to use it.
So which paragraph?
With the Rebbe's Kapitel and through this, the different ways that you can actually strengthen your Tachan and Amunah, and it's all intertwined.
So this is every week on Monday?
Yes, but I do different tools. Every Monday I bring in other tools from different things. We have everything. And the question is just understanding what we have, where to take it from, and how to use it. So I teach everyone how to do that.
Amazing. Maybe next time. I didn't daven yet. All right. Thank you. I want to pay someone. Rigo's not here.